And for our last guest for today's show is Myles Harris from Petrol Digital. And we're going to be talking all about Facebook advertising and Instagram advertising, social advertising as it's known in the trade. Welcome, Myles.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you for having me.
Myles, new year, lots of changes. You look back at 2019, look ahead to 2020.
Yeah.
Much always happens in the Facebook arena. Let's focus more on Facebook, but obviously when we talk Facebook, we're probably talking Instagram as well. Where do you see things currently? How did you see last year in terms of the whole Facebook advertising side of things? Lots of changes, as I said, lots of issues with Facebook, as we know.
Yeah.
And where do you see things going? Let's start in a broad sense.
Okay, well, Mark Zuckerberg's appearance in Congress and the US government scrutiny certainly had an effect. There's a lot more eyes on every ad that goes out and everything that we do. So knowing the rules of Facebook advertising has never been more paramount to a strategy. It's certainly still the king of the social platforms, and in terms of its maturity, there's certainly a lot more product available in space to advertise in on Facebook, and they keep on increasing that year on year, month on month.
Yep. So some of those rules, just for people that probably aren't across it all the time, and if you're a client, you've got someone doing it for you, or you're going to do it for yourself. I take it one thing is things are being scrutinised more. So does that mean, because Facebook, not that you know it necessarily, seeing what comes out of it, but is Facebook actually scrutinises the ads and has to check them off?
They do. So there's AI that goes over an ad first, and that artificial intelligence will pick up words and phrases that will send it through to a human for review. So, for example, in terms of investments, you can't promise an end outcome. But typically these rules align with your industry standard rules anyway. You just got to be more compliant. Stuff like before and afters as well. Everything's a case-by-case situation, and Facebook doesn't want to be seen as promising or tied up in that loop of promising something that can't be delivered.
So anything but political advertising is scrutinised, but political advertising seems to be a fair slap.
Yeah, it does, and you've got to, typically in countries that have it, you've got to be pre-approved, which is a long, many months process to get approved to do political ads. And anything that is worded politically, that will come up as flagged as political as well and won't be allowed to run.
So 2020, where do you see things? Do you see a lot more change? I know you're in the groups all the time, and the groups get the chatter and what's going to happen, and sometimes it's based on just rumour and innuendo, and sometimes someone knows something and is dug deep because, of course, it's the relationships they have with people within Facebook. What are you hearing at the moment?
The big thing for 2020 is that Facebook, for the past year, nearly two, has been moving to what we call CBO, so campaign budget optimization, which is a budget set at a campaign level instead of traditionally an ad set level. And Facebook has been learning how to optimize those for better results. So just to visualize that, your campaign would be Australia and your ad sets would be other states, and Facebook would allocate budget and reach according to who's actually in those markets and those categories. And the more I continue to do Facebook advertising, the more it integrates into a more traditional advertising space a lot better than it had. So I suppose acting bigger than you are, having better advertisements that are more like advertisements out there, focusing on the quality of those ads works in a better sense in Facebook than the sort of quick and dirty approach that we used to be able to do years ago.
As it does with, as you're saying, traditional advertising. If you've got a good ad, then it might stop people.
It is, and branding works. There's actually a branding awareness optimization there that works very well, which Facebook brings back a metric on how many people will recall your brand from seeing those ads. So you get a lot of reach.
A lot of data too to sift through. A lot to analyse. You love data, don't you?
I do. Well, it's effectively what it is. I can't do my job unless I understand the data coming back. So you've got to really come from an analyst perspective of it.
And so that's an interesting take too, isn't it? You know, you've got the creative, which needs to be really creative, and then the analytics, and maybe the two don't go hand in hand sometimes. And within agencies that do it, maybe that there might be a little bit of clashing.
Yeah.
We want to do this creative, but this is what the data tells us. So I don't think that's changed in all of advertising,
No.
but it's probably more at the pointy end. Okay, so let's get into tin tacks. Let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly in terms of advertising on Facebook, and let's throw Insta in, given that it's owned by Facebook, and they're the two powerhouses at the moment. So I just want to talk to you about LinkedIn and maybe YouTube a little bit later, but in terms of the good, the bad, the ugly, what have you seen that's been good? What do you see that works, and what are some commonalities of what good looks like in terms of social advertising, specifically around Facebook?
I think the brands that I've seen, the brands that I've worked with, that have, and this is a crude way of putting it, dropped their ego before heading into a space. So say if they're a corporate and they try and put their traditional Australian Financial Review style advertising into a social space, it just doesn't work. You've got to adapt. You've got to recognise that people scroll Facebook in their lunch break really, really, really quickly. So how do you get their attention yet still stay on brand? And so those that have worked out how to do that, how to adapt to actually who's looking at the ad on Facebook, perform a lot better than say a Troy McClure style character that introduces themselves traditionally, but you lost them and they've already kept scrolling on. The other one is adapting your media to the platform. So using a 1:1 ratio video on Facebook won't work so well on an Instagram story where it's a 9.15 to whatever ratio it is.
Vertical.
So it's got to look like it actually belongs in that space. And so those that do it better and add the polish generally perform much better.
So really it goes back to, and this is probably the same with content that I talk to clients about, is that the content and the content in the creative content for advertising has to suit the platform that you're going with, and understanding your audience, because they could well be different audiences, and even the messaging might be a little bit different as well. So are you seeing, so under the good banner, are you seeing that brands that get it are doing just that? They're adapting their creative, and it might be different across various platforms. Yeah,
they're adapting their creative. They've seen that those competitors in their space might have a header and a footer title on their videos, and they get a lot of engagement with that. So they do that, and it looks like they fit in, and that's what the users are used to seeing. That obviously goes then into the ugly, where it looks like a square peg in a round hole.
And it becomes copy.
Yeah, it looks dry, it looks stale, and they haven't really gotten to know the place that they're in beforehand. So you obviously have to try. So do you find that, sorry, just breaking there, but what you're saying is sometimes it's good to look at what's working and maybe trials, experiment, and you can experiment for virtually hardly any money down, and just to test what works. But if you just go and blatantly copy all the time, you'll end up looking like everyone else. Yeah, exactly. And that then takes you into, say, a brand awareness style campaign where you are going out there so people get to know you and warm up to you a bit, and they start to consider you, and then they start to purchase from you. And too many go straight in for the sale because Facebook is easy, they've heard, but it's also quite crowded now. So people see a lot of brands, and they need to get to know you first before they even start going through to your website, before they even start to purchase your product.
And given this, the show's called Brand Builders, and it's all about, you could go on to Facebook advertising, any of the platforms, and just start, spouting stuff, and it's almost like spam, like whether it's in your email or whatever, it can still be classified as spam. What do you think? I mean, I'm a great believer that you warm your audience up. If they don't know who you are, and you haven't warmed them up and given them a reason to care, then your ad's going to be less likely to work. But if you've added value, you've got the ask, and the ad pops up, they might actually stop their thumb if there's relevance there, and they've already know, like, and trust you, so to speak, because you've been around and you've added value. You've turned up, as Steve Ellis would say, you're turning up to the rooms. Yeah. It's kind of like the Gary Vaynerchuk name of his book many years back, Jab, 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 Right Hook.
Yes.
And jab being add value, ask for the sale, or a more call to action.
Works very well, and especially in a content space, it just really should be part of your strategy, period. Don't go into the Facebook world thinking that you're going to get organic reach, because the banger post that gets a lot of reach is becoming increasingly rare. So adding value with short videos, the Dennis Yu method of $1 a day, or he now says $5 a day, and it's running for months and months and months at a time. But at the end of the time, you're reaching nearly 1 million people for all of $100. Right, so his videos keep on rolling, adding product about his space. Dennis Yu, at Dennis Yu on Twitter. He keeps adding value about what works in Facebook advertising and advertising space. And they're very short, 15, 30-second videos, and he just keeps putting them out. But he's got videos that have run for 6-7 months.
So what would your advice be for someone who's running a business, whatever the brand might be, whatever they're doing, and obviously retailers tend to be more sale, where others are probably more, most other businesses, they're only a small part of obviously Facebook advertising. But if you're trying to build that profile, that reputation, that brand, but also sell stuff at the same time, what are a couple of tips do you think that you'd recommend in a generic sense, that sort of your go-to rules?
There's a lot of information out there, so I don't think there's really any excuse to go into it naive before you start. And I think that advertisers now have to know what their appetite is for their spend, because it's not a get in and get out play anymore. It's you have to think that you're going to be in it for at least 3 months, 6, 12, before people really start to buy from you. So be aware that you're going to have significant budget to brand awareness, and significant budget to clicks to your site, and then record those audiences and then retarget them for sales. So you just got to take a long-term view of the advertising, and also know that, you're good at what you do in your business, but you may not be necessarily great at creating an advertising video. So use services such as Ad Zombies to create videos that work in your space, and you won't be wasting money that way. You'll be getting an ad that works. You'll be paying $150 for it, but you'll be getting the conversions and what you need from it.
But it's also understanding your brand too, because if you're just spamming people coming in again and again and again, they don't know who you are, you're actually doing damage to your brand as well.
It is.
Well, people can block you too, can't they?
They can block you, but you've got to be comfortable about what you are about, and go out there. I'm not saying certainly change what you're about just to fit Facebook advertising. I'm saying that the message can only fit into 15 seconds, right, instead of like a long video. But if you're not comfortable, you're not going to keep on doing it. You're going to get a negative result.
And Instagram, any sort of more different types of advertising strategies for Instagram?
Yeah.
And how is that working that you see?
Instagram's continuing to mature. It's still, in my opinion, an immature product. Stories work very, very well, but it depends if you are a brand that fits in well with a demographic that consumes stories all the time. And look at some of the stories that appear in your feed, or your family members' feed, such as your wife and daughter or something, because those stories are very, very different to what I as a male would see in my feed. And you can shoot simply with a phone and do filters over the top with some software or something that adapts well to a feed. So Instagram's continuing to mature. It's just I suppose almost a specialised sort of space for the age group. And
is your audience there? Is the
is your audience there?
But the targeting Snapchat, and all that is there as well. So the tools and the data are there. And before we wrap up, Myles, I'd love to chat quickly about LinkedIn, because I'm starting to see a little bit of movement. What's your take on LinkedIn at the moment? I think it's only a matter of time before they start chopping back on the organic reach and making you pay for audiences. What are you hearing out there in the traps?
I'd suggest that they already are with it. My first ad I set on LinkedIn in 2013, and it was a very, very different, crude platform and very, very expensive exercise to experiment in. Now it's certainly matured. They're certainly going with the awareness, consideration and conversion principles, and you can see that their ad centre's divided up into that. So I've seen them add products last year, and they continue to add products to be more in line with Facebook's way of advertising. But if I was B2B or business to corporate, LinkedIn would be something that I'd be spending probably more time in.
Just experimenting a bit and checking out and being an earlier adopter rather than late adopter.
Exactly.
Okay, Myles, how can people track you down? Where can they find you online?
Find me via company's website at petroldigital.com or on Twitter at millionsofmiles, MYLES.
Excellent. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.